Welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast, brought to you by the All About Pigeons nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to promoting education and promotion of the pigeon hobby. Every week, a listener requests to drive our conversations about all things pigeons. Join me, Philip Fry, as we learn and share stories about these incredible birds and this ancient hobby. Today we're going to be talking about putting racing pigeon lofts in school. We have with us Ronnie Shumaker. Ronnie started racing pigeons in the year 2000 and 2003. He had the AU Publicity Award. In 2012, the AU Hall of Fame inductee. 2021, the organizer for the Deep South Concourse and former SC Zone director for the AU. He was the race secretary for the Queen City RPC and 59 Combine. He's currently the driver for the Deep South Concourse. So, Ronnie, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How did it get started with bringing racing pigeon lofts into schools?
I was a student at a rural school way back, and I loved FFA, and I loved the projects. I loved the animal husbandry and all the things that go along with that. So I became a teacher, I guess you would say, a little later. I had worked in the oil field for 10 years before I even went to college to become a teacher. Thought I was going to coach high school football, but instead became an elementary teacher because of calculus. And so then when I started teaching in Meridian, I was teaching fourth grade, and I applied for a Bell South grant, and it would allowed me to build a couple of small chicken coops on the playground. And it was just, the excitement of the kids having something to do, animal husbandry, and all that. So I just happened to be reading in a local farm paper. It said homing pigeons for sale, and I was needing a new grant title for the next year. And I thought, well, these things are supposed to fly back home. So I called and got information about the birds, and built a loft at school after receiving the grant. I think the grant was $500, but I knew nothing about pigeon racing. Didn't know it existed. Actually, I think I bought three pairs of homers. They were much too old to probably even turn out. But the guy that sold them to me had been a liberator for the New Orleans club. So I took those birds, and the kids enjoyed them, and I enjoyed them. And after that project, I took the birds home. I started another project the next year. I think that was with rabbits. So I had the pigeons at home, and fortunately, a gentleman who was training Navy pilots, Navy aviators here in Meridian at the Navy base, he had been a pigeon racer since he was a teenager, and he had breeders and would send birds to one loft races. And he found out at the local feed store that I had birds, and so we were able to form a club. I had given birds to some of my friends, and so we were able to get a club started. And bless his heart, being a naval aviator trainer, he works for the top 2% of our nation. And now these rednecks, he's trying to teach how to race homing pigeon, and it was a terrible learning curve for us.
So the first class you had it was a chicken coop at first, and there were fourth graders. What was the extracurricular there? Like, what was the lessons that you were teaching to the kids?
Well, the main thing, and believe it or not, what I found out early, if you find something that children want to do in the classroom, they will do anything to deserve that credit. For instance, we had chickens on the playground, and well, who gets to go feed the chickens each day? Who gets to take the water out each day? Who gets to go out with their journal and observe the birds for 10 minutes? Well, it's not the child who doesn't turn in his homework. It's not the child that's not well behaved. So initially, I found out these projects, we use it as classroom management. I can participate if I'm on great behavior. And also, we built the coops ourselves. We cut the lumber, we measure, we nail the wire. I had a young man uh, who he would ask, could he go to the restroom every 10 minutes? He was just sort of bored with classwork. And I'll never forget, we've got a wall of the chicken coop laying on the floor, and he's stapling the wire. And he's hadn't asked to go to the restroom in 30 minutes. And he's got his safety glasses down on his nose. And I said, Daniel, your group can go to the restroom now. And he said, I don't need to go. And he just kept on working. So I said, I got you. And so from there, I I was able to get the pigeons. And then once the club started, I was like, now I can go deeper into this because I basically did the same thing with the pigeons. But the only thing different was at the time, I didn't know how, to even calculate a pigeon race, but I did know that if I would take them away, they would fly back. So when I would take the children, I had duty free lunch. So that gave me about 25 minutes. So we would have caught the pigeons prior. And then when I take the children to lunch, I would drive the birds away a few miles, release them, come back, and the kids and I would go outside and wait for them to return. And they would just get so excited when they would come down and go in.
And so you've done this a few times as far as putting up other different lofts. And has it always been in the younger grades, or has it been kind of all over?
Most of my work has always been in the elementary, fourth, fifth, sixth grade area. And the highest grade I ever worked with was seventh and eighth, as personally. And eventually, over 20 years, I probably had lofts at 6 or 8 different schools. Um, so the first year it was only my school, and it was just, you know, flying the birds. The kids get to feed the birds, they get to water the birds, they get to see the babies when they hatch. I didn't even know about putting bands on the legs eventually. I learned that later, but it would be so amazing. The loft was right outside my class window, so I could let two children go at a time and sit there for about 10 minutes and journal write. I was a self contained teacher, so I taught math, science, social studies, reading, writing, and it was amazing to the children would write everything. They'd come in so excited. Oh, Mr. Shoemaker, we saw the pigeons making babies. They just, so excited about the birds
The first time you did this by writing a grant. Is that kind of how you've been doing this with setting these up? Has it always been through writing grants?
for the most part.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the grant writing back, of course, now it's AT&T, but used to there was Bell South, Bell East, and Bell, the Bell Company, South Central Bell, and they would give a $500 grant. And so after when I found out about pigeon racing, I thought, well, wouldn't this be neat to get some other schools to race with us? And so I wrote a grant. Mississippi Power is our local electric co-op. They were giving teacher grants and their educational program. So I communicated with two other schools that were somewhat local. One was about 15 miles away, and the other one was about 30 miles away, um, and asked if any of them would be interested. And so two schools agreed, and I applied for the Mississippi Power Grant. And I believe the amount was around $4,000, but that gave us money to purchase the training baskets, to build the lofts, to do all of that. We were recognized by the Mississippi Department of Education where they came and did a video it's on YouTube now. It's called Eyes to the Skies, and it was one of the original school projects that we did where other schools were involved. And I'm thinking that was around 2002, 2001, somewhere in there. And, but I guess what was amazing was I was in a city of maybe 50,000 people, 8 elementary schools, and I was teaching children who lived in housing projects, many of them, uh, socioeconomic, very, very low, but very precious kids. They had never been around animals like this. And it was very, uh, the animal husbandry and stewardship, taking care of animals. And then it was a matter of my test scores. Most schools, regrettably, a teacher is judged about how good are your test scores at the state level. And each year, my scores were at the top of our district. And we had schools where on the other side of town, where your doctors and lawyers and those children went. And so it meant a lot to me. But uh, what was special is to have a principal who would allow you to teach that way. Uh, Without a doubt, if my test scores had not been high, it probably would not have continued.
Right. So you called these other schools, and you've done this with other schools, but when you do approach other schools, like what are some of their concerns and like how do you smooth that over?
Of course, how will we take care of the birds on the weekend? What's going to happen during the summer? You have to have teachers or a teacher who can teach outside the box. They have to be a little different than a normal classroom teacher. I taught mathematics of my 27 years. I was teaching some type of math for over 20 of those and hardly ever used a textbook. For over 20 years, I had pigeons at school. You may not be old enough, but back when you would take the OACT or SAT college exam, every one of them had if a train is leaving Chicago, traveling 30 miles an hour, going east, and one is leaving New York, at what time will they intercept each other? So basically, pigeon racing is rate. Distance divided by time is speed. So therefore, there's I can't think of a subject area that I can't teach with pigeons. The writing, we would write letters and send surveys to different pigeon racers. We would, this is back before the internet was as big in the early 2000s. There was no social media per se, but the schools we would take PowerPoint. We would get new birds from different people. Like our first project with the other schools, we had a draft where we collected maybe 40 or 50 pigeons from different people, and we took pictures of them. Now they didn't look great, but we put it in PowerPoints and sent it to each other. And then on our draft day, uh, we connected in a chat type deal, and they said, "Okay, we'll take bird number 301," and Newton would say, "Okay, we'll take bird number 4706," and we just had it, and the kids were so excited because um, we had a little advantage where most of the schools, the other schools, they'd want to pick out their pretty pigeons. And they wanted the grizzles and the whites, and I'm like, okay, y'all, let's go for the blue bars and the blue checks, and so that but as I alluded to earlier, having kids come up to me, maybe they haven't done their homework, or maybe their behavior, the PE coach says, well, you know Jeffrey was misbehaving today. And then the next day, when it's Jeffrey's turn to go out and look at the pigeons to observe, Mr. Shumaker, I ain't got to go see the pigeons yet. I'm like, well, Jeffrey, what do you think? You know, Coach Logan said you had a terrible day yesterday, and that just puts that in his mind.
Yeah.
If I want to do extra things, I have to be on my best behavior.
Yeah. And we spoke about this earlier. Jim Jenner had a documentary all about, he touched on in California, there's a school that had a racing pigeon loft, and they talked a lot about all the different aspects, but specifically the way it would correct kind of bad behavior and stuff like this. And that was huge. And they also talked about like, yeah, like you said, it covers everything. You know, you're doing math, you're building the loft, nutrition. Like it's a really fascinating program to bring in.
If you can imagine, and of course, Jim Jenner is a dear. I consider him a dear friend of mine, and he stayed here when he was filming Young Wings.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So yeah, and I happened to be in that show. Anybody want my autograph? You just let me know. I'll mail it to you 10.99 free shipping. But and Jim said I had a face for radio. I don't know what he meant by that, but still, it's as teachers and educators, it's one thing to teach children the curriculum, the math, the reading. We do that. We want to do that. But it's more important to develop the life skills, the stewardship, the caring for animals, and to take care of something. And and so that was very important to me as a teacher. But um, Jim was very instrumental. As I said, when I started the projects and throughout most of my years teaching, um, it was all about the racing within the club. The school would be listed on the race sheet just like everyone else. But regrettably, most of the time our races are held on Saturday. And so the kids would get to see the birds during training during the week. However, they might not all get to come to the school to watch their birds arrive for the race. And um, as everyone knows, with pigeon racing, we have losses. Now, with losses, it's part of what we do. And when we would lose birds at school to hawks or in a race or in training, children need also to learn about disappointment and like, okay, let's get over it and try again next week. Jim changed the way I think about having lost at schools. If I had it to do over again, all of our races would just be within the school system itself and with other schools and not necessarily club racing.
Yeah, I know that the ARPU now actually has like a program set up specifically for racing lofts in schools.
Right before I joined the board, Bud Williams, Bud was the Southwest Zone Director from the Houston area, and he had helped me with my school projects. And that's what's been wonderful about the school projects. Over 20 years, I've met such wonderful people. And Bud wanted a way of clocking birds where you don't have to have a clock so that kids can clock their birds without having to buy, $1,000 clock.
And
And so eventually that system came to be. When I came on board, Bud passed the torch to me and says, "Take this and let's make it work." Regrettably, we it's only been recently that we have had people to use it. The There's a group out of Indiana, the and they my parish and those 4-H kids from Indiana, they've used a AU new clocking system. And what's wonderful about it is all you need is a counter mark machine and counter marks. And when the birds come home, the kids catch the bird, remove the band, enter the inside countermark number on their phone, and the race results go up immediately to the website.
Nice.
Now, having said that, someone has to enter the data prior, like match the bird number to the countermark number and all that. And I was able to spend about a year getting the bugs out of that system, and we got it. It's working, and it's a little high maintenance on the front end, but once it's you get it used to the system, it works great. And what I love about it, I know guys who they pigeon race on Saturday, but when their birds are coming home, they're either fishing or playing golf. And they get a text on their phone, "Oh, my bird just came in." And I'm like, "Well, that's okay. That's not the way I like to pigeon race." Uh, but that's okay if that's if a guy would rather play golf than watch his birds come in, more power to him. But with the project that you has with the clocking system, you have to be there to remove that counter mark, just like in the day when I started, because I can remember as a beginning racer taking those counter marks off and my hand trembling trying to put it in the clock and turn the handle and time the stamp. So that's what I do love.
So what would you say to somebody who, I mean, especially since you're an educator, you've been in the system and you've done this specifically with bringing race and pigeon lofts into schools, somebody who really wants to see maybe their kids in a school and then they want to bring it up to the board, what would you say would be a good sales pitch for them to really have an effective approach on that?
Not just because I'm in the video. I would encourage them to look at the YouTube that our State Department of Education created, where they took and visited all three schools. They interviewed the principals, curriculum directors, and teachers if they need help. And also, they need to understand what curriculum can be covered. Because at the end of the day, the principal wants the children, the principals, administrators, they want the children to learn.
Right.
And that's going to happen if it's used correctly. So it's just a matter of being, before you go with your proposal, just research. Feel free to contact me. Sometimes, if it's a parent, they may not know the educational jargon that and you've got to find the correct teacher.
Hmm.
You would not be able to force this on a teacher that's not willing.
Yeah,
You know
that makes sense.
that's and of course, uh, and also have information about uh, how pigeons are not as nasty and all of that. But yes, they do poop, and yes, you may have a smell that you're not used to when you clean out your loft. That type thing.
Hmm.
So uh, just be prepared with when the questions come, have something prepared ready to make. And if you don't know, say, I'll get back with you and contact someone who can help you.
And so you set up multiple lofts, and I'm guessing you're not running all of them right now.
Oh no, none of my prior schools have lofts now.
Oh, really?
Uh, the last loft I had was 6 years ago, the year before I retired, and it was at the school that I left. But from the year 2000, uh, I taught at one school uh, 11 years, and after about my third year there, we had a loft every year.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you're that familiar with Spring Hill, Florida, the
Oh,
GHC and
yeah.
that group down
Yep.
there. Yeah, Little Belgium.
Hmm.
I was able to take my school children down there on a field trip
Oh, wow.
in 2004,
Well,
and that was a very big deal for those kids because most of those children had never been out of the city of Meridian,
oh,
and it was a lot of fundraising. It was difficult. I'm not saying it was, but not only was I a classroom teacher, but I was also what we call a looping teacher. So when I would go to fourth grade and teach, those same children went to me with me to fifth grade. And so I was able to take them down there for 3 or 4 days, and we was able to visit the AU convention at Tampa.
Nice.
And so and like I say, it was a wonderful experience for those children.
And so it obviously covers all these different subjects and everything else. But at the same time, I mean, I got to imagine that some of these kids probably caught the pigeon bug a little bit. And
Well, I had at least over the years, I had at least 6 children to have their own pigeon lofts at their
oh,
home.
well, there you go.
Yeah, and now none of those children are racing today. They're grown, but if you can just plant the seed. The other day, I saw one of my former students. She has a 4-year-old daughter now, and she's like, Miss Shoemaker, I would like to get some birds for my child. And I'm like, well, I can make that happen. I can hook you up, girl.
Nice.
So, and there's every time I go into Meridian, Walmart, or go somewhere to eat or meet someone, a former student, the first thing they say is, Miss Shoemaker, you still got them pigeons? And I tell them, I can't help myself, child. You know, so it meant a lot to a lot of children over the years,
Yeah.
and it can in the future. Any school, any 4-H, FFA group, or homeschool group,
Hmm.
if they need help getting set up, I'll do all I can to help them. What's amazing is people in the pigeon world, they want the next generation to continue with their birds, and they're very. When I went to meet Mike um, 2 years ago for the 4-H, our concourse donated almost 70 pigeons for those 4-H kids. And I was able to meet him at our one of our release points. He drove down from Indiana and met me in Arkansas. My hats are off to those adults who will go the extra mile to help kids with these projects.
Yeah. And it's helping the pigeon hobby all together too. And that's our future. Coming up against the clock here, but Ronnie, thank you so much for coming on. And that website, it's a YouTube video. It's Eyes to the Skies that you made reference to before. So if people are interested, that's where you'd go.
Yes, and then just email the AU. They can send the link. Is I believe ARPU is in the title, Eyes to the Skies,
Okay, excellent.
and you get to see me 20 years and 30 pounds ago.
Nice. Got to do some time traveling. How about that? Ronnie, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you for listening to another ad-free, listener-requested episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. If you like the show and want to help it keep it going, as well as supporting your other pigeon promotional work, head to the website PigeonPod, that's pigeonpod.com. You can make a donation there. If you can't make a donation today, support the show by giving us a good 5-star review wherever you're listening to us at right now. That really helps the podcast and helps the algorithm get us out there to other people who might not know about Pigeon Podcast. If you have any episode requests, upcoming pigeon shows, competition results, or you want to be a guest on the show and just talk about some pigeons, or you have a shout out for a friend, shoot us an email at staff@pigeonpod.com. Thanks again for listening. We really appreciate your support. And remember, together the hobby thrives. Support each other and enjoy your pigeons.